actually feel relieved when your spouse isn't around. Most hiring managers say they'll automatically dump a job applicant if they show up even 1 minute late for an interview. The kids who exercise for at least 1 hour a day, they perform much better academically than those who didn't exercise at all.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Got an interesting subject, an interesting guest, and the type of guest that normally gets the phone just ringing off the hook. However, that's not the reason why I invited him. I just am fascinated by this topic, and just a real quick personal story. A few years ago, the day after my father's funeral, I had a phone call from a publicist, and publicists, just in case you don't know, and I suppose most of you do, these are the people who book guests with us. They call up and they said, they're like agents, I guess. Anyway, the publicist said, I don't know if this is going to be your cup of tea, Larry, but we have a guest who wrote a book about called Postcards from Heaven, and it was this man who had lost his father, and he felt like he was seeing little signs. Like he'd drive down the road and he'd see a billboard and he thought, wow, that message is for me from my dad. He was looking at things differently and wondering if maybe they were messages from his father. Not that he knew they were. Okay. So I said to the publicist, I said, no, that's a perfect guest. I would love to have that. The guest was a well-known TV producer or something, remember?
Yes.
Okay. So I said to the publicist, I would love to have this guest on. My father's funeral was just yesterday, and I kind of can relate to what you're saying, because I'm thinking the same thing, you know. I see something, or my father smoked a pipe, so if I smelled a pipe tobacco, you know, I say, oh, I wonder if that's my dad saying hi, you know. You know, that kind of stuff. So anyway, she said, oh, wow, I didn't know your father just passed away. I know this psychic. And she all of a sudden called on her conference line this woman who didn't know me, didn't know she was going to call. And long story short, the woman started talking to me and gave me some messages from my dad, she said. I happened to be in the production room when this was going on, so I hit the record button and got it on tape. Listened to it a few times, and the more I listened to it, the more I said, oh, wow. I mean, she's really nailing it. Yeah. I mean, things that she wouldn't have known, nothing. Not only would she not have known, but she didn't even have time to prepare to get to know me. There was no like Google search for Larry. I mean, she got this call out of the dark from the publicist, and it's been fascinating to me. And that was what, 4 years ago now?
Yes,
just a little bit over 4. Blair Robertson is on the phone. He says he does the same thing, and I think, if I understand it right, he can also teach us how to do this same thing. And in the notes, it says that he started when he was 14. His grandmother came to him to say goodbye the moment she passed away in 1979. Fascinating. When I hear about people who can do this, I don't suspend disbelief, I suppose. I listen, you know, and then I make a decision. And Blair is on the phone. I'm looking forward to having him on. We will take phone calls, by the way. I just wanted to let you know that wasn't the whole purpose of him coming on. Blair Robertson, did you say to Robin you were in Arizona right now?
I am in Arizona. That's where I live. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Well, good morning, Blair. Thank you for getting up early to be with us.
Oh, it's no problem. I usually get up most early mornings. I do a lot of, what I guess they call the morning shows or the morning drive shows. So it's a real pleasure to be on your show. I'm really glad to be here. That
would make sense. Now, the thing that I always have a problem with this topic is, how do you know who to believe? How do you know? Like, if you go to a carnival and there's a lady with a crystal ball or something like that, I mean, how do you know it's a real, you know what I mean? How do you know if somebody's telling you the real stuff?
Well, really, the best way to do that is if you go to a carnival, generally, and that's a great question. I have all the time in the world for people that are skeptical. I think it's really good to be skeptical. I don't have any time at all for people who are cynical. And cynical people, you can usually tell them, they'll say that, God doesn't exist or that's not true. And they just will not be open to anything. I like skeptical people. But if you go to a carnival, you're going to get what's known as a mitt reader or a palm reader, and they're usually there for a lark. It's there for fun. But the way you find out is just, how do you find out about a good doctor? How do you find out about a good lawyer? How do you find out about a good mechanic? I've been living here in Arizona for 2 years, And I asked around because I needed to get a suit made for an event I'm doing. And unfortunately, my stomach has expanded a little bit, so my old suit doesn't fit me anymore. But I checked around, and I found this great, terrific guy. He had an amazing reputation, and when I went to see him, he fulfilled, the reason why he has that reputation. And that's what I always recommend to people. If they've got a reputation, then, like that person that you were talking about before, I'm sure you would recommend somebody else to her because she delivered for you. She gave you stuff that you couldn't possibly know. Don't just call up just anybody, or don't go onto these online places or these pay-by-minute places.
So let me start with a question that actually stems from that conversation, because some of the things on the tape, I was able to listen to the tape for the last 4 years. Every time something happens, I go, what did she say again? And I go back. She actually told me one thing that that I didn't even know. It was almost as if suspend disbelief, everybody, just for a second. Just imagine my father really was communicating with me. It was almost like he could see into the future, because he was telling me something that happened like 3.5 years later. Was that a coincidence? Is it possible? Like right now, if I were to call you on the phone, living here in Florida, you're living there in Arizona, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 3 years. When we die, do we have somehow the ability to look into the future?
Well, my personal belief is the future is absolutely not set in stone, but it's just like throwing a rock. That's the example I like to give, or a basketball or something like that. If I throw a rock, you'd be able to see probably where it's going to land. You can see probably the direction something is going. And again, if you had somebody like a really heavy alcoholic drinker, you know that's probably going to bring about their demise, because they're just constantly getting worse and worse and worse. You know that something probably bad is going to happen to them. So you don't even need to be psyched. So there are things that are predictable, but the future is not set in stone. Because if you make if I told you were going to get mugged when you leave your house tomorrow, like you're going to get seriously mugged and seriously injured, you probably wouldn't leave your house. And then tomorrow night you'd be saying, "Hey, Blair, you said I was going to get mugged." Here's the question: did you change your future?
Yeah, right.
Seriously, you can modify how things are going to change.
Okay, so now tell me about the time when you were 14. Your grandmother passed away, and she came to you. Now, did you see her as a physical being?
Well, what happened is I'll make a very long story short. It's really brief. I was coming home. I was working with a magician at this exhibition, and it was late at night. I'd missed a bus, and I was walking home. And as I was walking home, I was walking past this lamp post. Remember, it's late at night, and I used to live in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'm walking past this lamp post, and all of a sudden, this sort of, I don't know how to describe it other than it was like a purple cloud sort of enveloped me. And then I saw my grandmother's face, and her face was all twisted up. See, she had multiple strokes, and for all intents and purposes, she was in the hospice just waiting to die. She couldn't speak, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. It was terrible. But I saw her twisted face, and then her face relaxed, and she let out this big, huge smile. And it takes a lot longer to explain. I mean, I'm talking about just a split second, but it really impacted me. And I just knew. I thought, wow, Nanny, I used to call her Nanny. Nanny came to me. I get in to my house. My mom had made dinner for me. It was like about 11 o'clock at night. She'd saved it. And as soon as I walked in, my dad said, "Sit down." And he never used to talk to me like that. And I just looked at him and said, "Nanny died, right?" And his face went white. He said, "How did you know that?" He said, "She came to you, didn't she?" And I said, "Yes." See, my father was not psychic, but my grandfather, his dad, was. And it skipped generation, it seems, in my family. And that was the first time I had a connection that I remembered from the other side. I had experiences before, but I didn't know what they were. This was the first one.
That visit from your grandmother had a purpose. She was saying goodbye. Do all of the visits have a purpose?
I believe they do. I believe that our loved ones, you're asking some fantastic questions, and I appreciate this. They always have a message. But, I always tell people, what's the difference between spirit guides and loved ones? The difference is your spirit guides are assigned to you before you're born to guide you. Your loved ones are there to just show you love. In the case of your father, although I'm sorry he passed away, and I can relate to that, he's just there around you to love you, to encourage you, to, really give you the support to be the best that you can be. And they all do that for all of us.
And when we die, and we decide to hang around so that we can be there for the people who are left behind, and then they die, and then maybe the grandchildren die. In other words, after enough time goes by, do we still hang around, or do we go somewhere else? What happens? I mean, do we? Is it in infinite that we're hanging around?
Well, it's interesting. People always ask me on a regular basis, because I am a medium. They say, how far back can you go? I've had great grand people come through and bring messages, but it seems to stop after a certain point. And I believe that we do have the ability to reincarnate. I really do believe we have the ability to come back. And so I don't think that there's like millions and millions of people on the other side. I really believe at a certain point you do come back.
I wondered that too. And I've wondered that if, let's say you wanted to contact your great-great-grandfather, and let's just say, and again, suspending disbelief, just so that we can have this conversation, he's reincarnated, and he's living in Utah, or whatever. Could I communicate with him, and would he have to be asleep? In other words, when we're asleep, do we become the pure soul that we've always been?
These are great questions. Boy, I wish everybody asked me questions like this. Most of them are very boring. This is awesome. If they're alive and if they've reincarnated, they're on this side, we cannot connect with them. We can't. We wouldn't be able to.
So when we sleep, we don't go into that spirit world again? That's not what dreaming is?
Well, no, there's two different things. There's dreams, and then there's connections from the other side. So a dream is usually, you can usually tell you've had a dream because dreams are usually incoherent and don't make any sense. Like you're sitting on a rubber duck and you're floating down your street and there's clowns at the side of the road. It's like you wake up and you go, what the heck was that all about? That's just a dream. But if you have somebody come through to you in your like so-called dream state while you're sleeping, you'll know them. Like you'll know if your father comes to you, you'll know if your mother comes to you because you'll recognize them. By the way, the most signature of dreams is usually the faces are you don't know who you're talking to. You're speaking to a man, but you didn't know who he was. You couldn't tell what he looked like. In a dream, it'll be your dad. Your dad will be right there.
Huh. The one thing I've often hoped is that if there is anything beyond here, that whatever wisdom I've learned stays with me. I don't know about knowledge. I'm not so sure that knowledge is important because learning how to play the typewriter, or type on the typewriter, I should say, a skill that you learn might not necessarily be necessary, but knowing how to be kind to other people would be really necessary. And when we look back on the mistakes we've made in life, we don't say, oh, I had a typo. We said, oh, I lied to my teacher, or I was nasty to my neighbor. And you just hope as we get older and gain wisdom that remains part of our soul and our being so that next time around we don't have to learn that again.
That's again, very intelligent, because that's exactly what the spiritual journey is. The spiritual journey is, I'm trying to learn how to play guitar. I can play okay, but I'm not very good at it. Once I cross over, and eventually if I come back, I'm not going to necessarily have that skill. It's the spiritual journey. It's the spiritual learning of the lessons, the karma you build up, the good that you've done and the bad that you've done. And they weigh up, and it's something that carries through with you. Like wisdom, as you get older, you get wiser. And I believe that the more times that we reincarnate and come back through, then the more times, the greater the knowledge is going to be. And in fact, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, it's neither here nor there. I mean, it's just one of those things. But if you take something as simple as numerology, the numerology is basically karmic numbers, 1 to 9, 11 and 22. The higher the number, the more karma you've built up, the more lifetimes you've had, the more experience, the more wisdom.
Is it healthy for people to try to seek out their departed loved ones?
Oh, absolutely it is. It's fantastic. It's a great thing to do. Basically, one of the things that it does is it gives people, I'm referenced the technical term for what we do, these folks on television and myself, we're what we call evidential mediums. In other words, we bring evidence from the other side that your loved ones are there, that your loved ones are in a good spot, and they are safe, and that they are watching over you, just like this other excellent medium clearly did with you, so that you know that your dad's on the other side, and there, it just makes you feel much more comfortable, and it's a great thing. There's no harm whatsoever. I can't think of any negative reason. The only thing I tell people, though, is don't be dependent on a medium. You don't ever want to become dependent on a medium. I don't allow people to book readings with me for at least 6 months to a year after they've had a reading, because I don't want them to depend on the medium.
That's
you
true.
Need to become independent.
Yeah. You might be visiting a dearly departed person that's more after they die than they did when they were alive.
Well, here's the other thing, though. I can't dial people up. I don't know of any medium that can, dial people up. Like, I can't specifically go and target your father or grandpa or grandma. And most mediums like myself, they just can bring through whoever wants to come through. So it's up to the other side. I consider myself to be a messenger, sort of like a spiritual postman, so to speak. I just deliver the mail.
So they can call us up, but we can't call them up. Is that right?
Well, they can sometimes. Like if somebody's doing a reading and they want to speak to Dad, sometimes Dad will come through. Sometimes Dad doesn't come through. Anybody that you're connected with that's on the other side can come through, and that can be in-laws, it can be outlaws, it can be it can be friends, family, the next door neighbor that you knew when you were a kid. Anybody.
I've watched John Edward, and I've also watched people try to debunk John Edward, and I really believe he is really communicating to people. To departed ones. I don't know. I mean, I really don't. If I said I knew, then I'd be lying. I don't know, but I believe he is. He doesn't seem like he's a phony. We had a guest on the show. She lost her son in a car accident, and she had never had a dream, a vision, or anything about her son. She wished she had, but other people were having dreams, and she actually knew John Edward before John became a household name, before he was famous. And he told her some stuff about her son that nobody could have known, especially a stranger. And so that was how she believed in him. And I guess it was that kind of thing that eventually made him become famous.
Sure.
So are you doing that kind of a thing? Are you doing some kind of demonstration? And do you want to do some now? Do you want me to invite listeners to call, or? Oh,
I'd be happy to take calls. I mean, obviously, one of the rules that I have is I personally don't do readings for the hosts of shows. No offense, but everybody at home would be thinking that it was set up. And I liked what you said. They'd be thinking that I Googled stuff anyway. Yes, I'd be happy to take some calls and talk to some listeners and connect them with whoever wants to come through from the other side. I'd be glad to do that.
If there is a person who has died from a bank robbery, something like that, that's an innocent bystander, a car running a red light or something, and then that person that does the killing disappears, can you help the survivors find who did that heinous act?
Yeah, that's a horrible thing, and I get requests for that. I've got about 44,000 people on my newsletter list, so I get requests on a regular basis.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And it's I've been asked to help police out, and that I'm personally against psychics getting involved myself. If other psychics do it, that's fine, but I don't, because I don't claim to be 100% accurate. I'm shown things, and I have to interpret them. And if I interpret them wrong, there was a case, I think it was in Texas last year, I think it was, where some psychic gave some information, and they had tons of police go and raid this guy's house. There was nobody there. The guy's suing the police now. They used all those resources up. I don't do that. I have yet to have somebody from the other side come through and blame something, because spiritually we all believe that when our time is to come, that is our time to come. So as much as it's a delicate topic, but you gave the example of somebody being shot in a robbery. If they were shot in a robbery, it was their time to go. So it's just that's how it works.
Okay. Plus,
and so they would not be coming back pointing fingers. I've never had that happen. And secondly, I wouldn't want to get sued. We live in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, right. And plus, I guess if the law of karma applies universally, then that person who did the shooting, he's got his number. Whatever it may be.
Oh, for sure. Just a quick sidebar, just for the listeners' amusement, maybe yours, or maybe it just amuses me, and I like to hear myself tell the story. But do you remember that guy, the sniper, that was shooting the people on the East Coast?
At the gas stations.
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually did. This was self-imposed. I actually asked myself and my guides, please let me find some way to help in some way, shape, or form. And I involved my friends and family as my witnesses. I didn't publish anything outside, so I'm not making any claims. But the only thing that I got was a big orange building, which I felt was going to be a Home Depot. But I went and looked on the map, and then I Googled, back in those days, but 10 years ago, I Googled the home. There was like, I don't know how many, there was like 40, 50 in that area. I had no idea where it was going to be, and I was very frustrated. And it was even more frustrating that there was a shooting outside of a Home Depot. But it would have been a waste of time. You can't call the police up and say, hi, I'm a psychic, and there's going to be shooting at some Home Depot.
Yeah, right.
I'm not trying to be funny, but it was
right. No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I had a dream that the space shuttle crashed here, and it didn't crash here. In fact, after I had the dream, there was no more shuttle crashes. All right, let's go to the phone. We do have the phone line open, and if you want to ask Blair a question about somebody who has passed away, he might be able to communicate with them. I guess there's no promises here. Blair Robertson is our guest. He is a psychic, and this is what he does. And I think there's something on here that says you can help us know how to do this ourselves. All right, good morning. You're on the air with Blair Robertson.
Good morning. I'm enjoying this conversation. I had a cousin that passed away about 5 years ago.
Can I just stop you just for 1 second?
Sure.
One of the things that I like, and this is great, but I didn't mean to be rude.
That's okay.
First off, all I just want to know is just your name. But secondly, I prefer you not to tell me anything because, and I'm not trying to, in a humorous way, if somebody comes to me and says, I want to speak to my grandfather Harold, he was in the Second World War, he was missing an eye and missing a leg, then I get a guy come through and I say, well, I got this guy named Harold here, he's missing an eye and leg. You're going to leave thinking, well, I told him that.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So it's not, I'm not trying to prove anything. I really not trying to prove anything to anybody. I just prefer the information to just reveal itself.
Okay. Well, I didn't know how this was going to work. So
no, it's okay because I didn't think we were going to take the call this quickly, so it caught me off guard. And that's okay. It's live radio. So what is your name?
Linda.
Linda, okay. So I always say this to the first caller when I'm on radio shows, and that is I can't guarantee I'm going to dial anybody up. I can't specifically say who's going to be able to come through, but anybody that's connected to you from the other side, anybody, from the next door neighbor you had when you were in grade 1, to your favorite teacher, to a divorced person, their family, anybody can come through. Mm-hmm. First thing I have right now is I have two energies that are coming through for me right at this moment in time. And one of them is a male energy, much older, he's above you, so I'd put this as a grandfather figure. I'm getting something to do with the chest area, so this would be something to do with, and it's interesting because you mentioned earlier on by pipe, but I'm getting smoke. I'm getting a smoke smell to it. So it feels like to me that this gentleman would have passed through some sort of cancer or something along those lines, but I got the feeling that he had more than one issue with him. So it might have been the cancer, but I got the feeling he had more than one issue. He's the one that's coming through right at this moment in time. And I'm getting an M sound to a name. I don't always get the names exactly correct, but I'm never usually off on the first letter or how it sounds. But I'm getting an M connection, so I don't know if this is him, somebody that he's with, or somebody that's on this side, but I'm getting an M sound. It sounds like it's an M-A-R sound, so it could be like a mark or something along those lines. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm. It could be a man or a woman, though.
No, okay, this is the man that's doing this,
okay.
that's telling me this, the grandfather figure. So when I say a figure, it could be the grandfather or somebody who's like a grandfather to you, mm-hmm. bringing through this other person, talking about an M-sounding name. Who's the M name?
I don't have an M. My grandmother was Martha, that's why I asked. Okay,
so that would be an M name, right?
Yeah, but it was my grandmother.
And Martha is M-A-R, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And that is that the two of them together? Is this his wife?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that would be correct, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So that's who he's talking about. Just wants to acknowledge that they're there and they're watching over you at this moment in time. Now, they also have a younger energy that's coming through, and I cut you off from what you were saying, but I don't know if you were talking about a younger energy, but I've got somebody that passed very, very quickly, a young male energy that's coming through. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. Passed suddenly. So I can't tell it, but I'm getting like I'm getting like a sort of an impact feeling is what I'm getting. So I don't know if he died in an accident of some sort or if he how did he pass away?
He had cancer, lung cancer, and it ate through his back, and he was paralyzed. He it was like 4 months in the hospital, and that was it.
Okay.
And he was younger.
Okay, I'm getting this, and this is going to sound strange because they give me symbols, stuff that I understand. I'm getting like a boom, boom. I'm getting boom, boom. Whenever I get something along those lines, it means somebody got sick, got better, then they got really bad and passed away.
Yeah,
so,
that more or less was him.
Okay, so they're just acknowledging that he's on the other side.
And they raised him.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, they raised him. Oh, wow.
They're together. Also talking about the family of 5. And there's 3 of one, 2 of the other. So that'd be 3 boys, 2 girls, or 3 girls?
Yeah, no. My cousins, there was 3 of them, and then my sister and I, we were 5, and it was almost like we were all raised together. We were really close.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. And there's something there. This is strange. He's asking about the chair. He's asking about the chair.
Hmm.
He's just saying the chair. Ask her about the chair.
Wow.
What's the deal about the chair?
I don't know.
Is it
they're
showing me a rocking chair. My wife has this ugly.
I have a chair on my father's side that I've kept. But
I'm not sure why that's coming up, but is it an ugly chair, by the way?
It was. I mean, I've kept it because it was my grandma's and grandpa's. I didn't know Grandpa, but he's
laughing. He thinks that's very funny. I don't know what the connection is.
Got mad because my grandmother would always move it, and she got mad one time and nailed it to the floor.
Oh, wow.
Listen, this is just their. I don't know how long we've got here, but
we're actually out of time.
Well,
but Linda, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And Blair, that was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. And I apologize for such a brief opportunity for our listeners, but I just had so many questions, and I guess you're doing radio interviews so we can get a hold of you or go to your website or something. Am I right?
Yeah, thank you. I've got a free webinar that I'm putting on. My website crashed earlier this week, and some psychic I am. I didn't foresee that happening. but I had a page specially, but it's corrupted, so it's not working. But if the listeners just go to BlairRobertson.com, 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 just sign up for my newsletter. I'm doing a free webinar tomorrow night, actually, Saturday night, and it's just briefly, it's going to show you how to connect with your guides and your deceased loved ones, absolutely free. I do offer a course at the end of it, but you don't have to buy it. It's still, you can just take I would love for people to sign up for that.
Okay.
So if you sign up for the newsletter, I promise the people that sign up today, I'll make sure they get an email with the link to sign up for the webinar.
Okay, BlairRobertson.com. Blair, thank you for being on the air with us. I feel like I wish it was longer, but obviously you didn't need any more to impress us with this. Thank you, Blair. Good interview.
I'd love to be back on again. Take care, guys.
You're welcome back anytime. We'll be right back.
This is Don with ABC Frederick's Appliance. Here's my daughter, Lena.
And hey, everybody, it's Lena. You need to come down to ABC Frederick's Appliance on County Road 25, just over the railroad tracks in Bellevue, where you are treated right with the right products like Whirlpool, Maytag, Crosley, and Speed Queen. These are the new ones. Don't forget, we also carry used appliances that we warranty. ABC Frederick's